Each series that revolves around time traveling has a different take on the laws of time that their universe must abide by. The initial point that I made when Chang possessed Lu Guang and he must arrive at the dock to reenact the events, and I said it was going to be a point of convergence. I am going to be honest, I wasn't completely confident, but the introductory scene confirmed that convergence does in fact exist in Link Click. As we see the policemen seemingly divert their eyes the moment they're about to catch him. We don't know exactly how long this period of convergence lasts and whether or not Lu Guang is also fated to end up being captured. But we did see Tainted stand his ground, and as he turns around and stares right into Lu Guang's eyes, the episode ends. There's going to be a chance that the world will refuse to move forward, and everything will end up in a standstill unless Lu Guang walks onto that boat. Or maybe an entirely wacky scenario is forced to play out where he ends up on the boat regardless. But we'll just have to wait and see until the next episode. Again, Link Click does not shy away from tackling modern issues in society. Keen, a man in the position of captain at the police department, engrossed in his work in order to provide for his family and is struggling to find a healthy work-life balance. And in the end, one side must crumble. We are then presented with an immensely difficult question to answer: who's truly at fault in this situation? A husband who ends up being absent from his family in order to provide in an ever-increasing cost of living society, furthering the gap between wages indefinitely. Or a man who saw an opportunity of a relationship doomed to fail because the husband was neglecting the wife. And for argument's sake, let's just say that he was truly in love with her. Or the wife who should remain in an unhappy marriage and continue to endure it because the husband's out there putting the hours in for the family. It's probably easiest to blame the homewrecker, but then you also have to consider the fact that the wife could have been the pursuer. And there's so many variables that you'll end up just in a circle pointing fingers without truly finding a resolve to this question. But there is an answer to who's carrying the heaviest burden at the moment, and that's undoubtedly Keen. As he learned that his wife was also pregnant at the time of the murder, and at that point, do you even want to know who it belonged to? But the fall of his character doesn't end here. The potentially most important detail has yet to be discussed. But before I can go into detail, we need some context. This episode has yet to conclude what truly happened at the apartment and how Li Fan and Lu Lan actually died. Or maybe we just have enough information to piece it together in its entirety. As Keen arrives at the scene, the policeman at the elevator was surprised to see him working as he's just finished with his family affairs. And if by affairs he meant the suicide of his wife's killer, then we can assume that the events were still fresh in his mind. And this point is going to be significant later. Keen approaches the twins and Tension with a blank face due to the trauma and dealing with a lot of stress and many other emotions, says he killed them. What does he even mean by that? How exactly did he even kill them? If we go back to the animation of the foxes, a scene where at face value would seem not very significant just given how it was animated, gave us some very important details. As Tension sharpens his skills as a hunter, someone who kills not when hungry but rather with purpose. We see a flashback of Lu Lan, his mother, saying sorry and Bin saying sorry. We know that Bin likely died at the hands of Tension, but why is Lu Lan there? And if you look closely, Lu Lan has a handprint around her neck, where Li Fan likely attempted to strangle her to death. When Chang possessed Tenshi back when they were eating supper, the fight never got that far and she did have the hand marks around her neck when she picked up the hammer and went for the kill on Li Fan. So this must mean that the events where Chang supposedly possessed Lu Lan differed from the original timeline at the apartment on that day. So why did Chang possess Lu Lan and kill Li Fan in that situation? What if it had to be him, to be the one to kill Li Fan to prevent the doomed timeline? During the fight, if you remember, the neighbor knocked on the door to check up on them and you see Tension face down with his eyes hidden. And if you think back to episode 7, we've seen this exact portrayal of his face in multiple occasions, and that was when he was controlling someone. And we've seen him talk while controlling someone as well. Li Fan says, "Why did this coward decide to be a hero today?" And we know that domestic violence in this family isn't anything new. So this was out of character for him to do. And whenever a situation like this arose, such as when Wang smiling as noted by the gatekeeper, and Lulan supposedly killing Li Fan, and Cheng saying that it doesn't match her character, because she was used to enduring domestic violence without putting up a fight. In each of those scenarios, they were possessed by somebody. The intervention of the neighbor ended up enraging Li Fan further because he accused Lulan of also being unfaithful with him. Something that Tainted did, with the intention to de-escalate the situation, turned into a full-on attempted murder. The fight likely continued to escalate, with Li Fan about to strangle Lulan to death, forced Tainted to intervene, and possessed his mom and grabbed the hammer, killing him. Upon releasing his control of her, he is in shock and ends up confessing that this is all her fault and she actually was being unfaithful and was cheating with the teacher. And she never intended for any of this to happen, which either drove Tainted to possess her to commit suicide or she did it herself. And as a result, he was the one who killed both of them, which is why he blames himself. I also don't think that Tainted wanted his father out of their lives even though he was abusive, because every time he brought the tales of the foxes, the family was always together and happy. He's just angry at the people who's tearing their family apart, and he blames them for their problems. Now, back to the point of Keen's true downfall. I originally thought them laughing was just a chilling and crazy scene, but if you look closely, there might be more context to it than just the pure madness. I did previously say that I theorize the twins' abilities work in tandem and are likely linked through touch. And as Keen grabbed both of them, they ended up connecting all three of them. You see Tenchi burst further into tears, and then Tenchin says he killed them, and Keen has a look of complete shock, and then Tenchi bursts into even a louder cry, which prompted Tenchin to laugh hysterically, followed by Keen. What if all three of them accidentally linked their traumatic experience with one another due to Tenchi's heightened senses, which drove both Tenchin and Keen mad? Given that assumption, it now kinda makes sense why Keen took it upon himself to immediately adopt both of them and then abruptly leave the police department and erase as much detail about them as possible. Now, back to my point where I said what if it had to be Chang? What if the endgame play is that he had to be the one to burn the guilt of killing someone that night? Because the death of one of the parents was a point of convergence that cannot be avoided, and it was in order to prevent Tenchin from breaking bad and killing Lu Guang and all of his other victims, he had to take it upon himself to possess Lulan in that evening. Okay, now that I'm done with that insane theory, we need to talk about Minlu's brother, who is now confirmed to be Tenchin's childhood friend. He's definitely the main villain here, without a doubt in my mind. We have Chang, who has the ability to change the past, Tenchin, who has the ability to change the present, and now we're just missing one more, and that's the ability to change the future. And he constantly talks about future events each time we see him. So it's not that crazy to think he has this ability. First, he's way too wise for someone his age, speaking like someone much older than he is, and his rich and powerful father praises him of his abilities, all of which can be explained with him having an ability revolving around the future. Now thinking back, what if I wasn't completely wrong about Keen's backstory after all? What if Minlu's younger brother really did move the chess pieces to ensure that Keen and Tenchin meets in their given circumstances, turning Tenchin from a wounded beast into a hunter, and Keen being the perfect mentor for him? He's also very certain that he'll meet Tenchin again, but it seems that they have yet to reconcile after this many years. Even though he must know of him because Keen works for his father and Tenchin is always around him. None of his circumstances or behavior really makes any sense unless he has some sort of ability and he's been plotting all this time. Lastly, there's one more point to address, and that's the reason behind why Tenchi ran away. We basically got the answer to this during the Fox animation. Tenchin ended up killing Bin, who had a wife with a kid on the way. As far as we know, none of the other victims had any children, The result of Bin's death would be that his child would grow up without a father. You can see why this is a sensitive topic for Tenchi given their backstory. If there's any doubt, she literally betrayed them right after Bin dies. This episode had a lot of emphasis on destiny, fate, convergence, whatever you want to call it. I think this topic is going to be a reoccurring theme for the remaining episodes, and will be the driving force of the conflicts that we have yet to see. I originally had my doubts on whether or not Season 2 could top Season 1, but this episode was cemented as my favorite episode of any season of Link Click. With the drama and the 3 different animation styles, the subtle storytelling. Truly a masterpiece of an episode. Anyways, if you stuck around till the end, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.